Long time no see, Scott. How are you? Hi, Andrew.
Hey,
Ben will join us a little bit later. Him and Kristen have childcare responsibilities tonight, so they will be joining us, but Ben will join us a little later. Welcome, Mr. Pierce. Welcome, Devon. T.
Hey Marisol, Devon, hey Scott,
Yep.
Andrew.
Mr. Pierce is also here.
Hi. From New Jersey?
Yes, the assistant
Great.
ombuds. Yep.
Lisa, okay.
Yes.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Can you hear me? Because I had trouble with audio yesterday.
We can hear you. Yep. So
Ben
yeah.
says Ben will be running a little late. He has a sick child.
Okay. Yeah, we've a lot of that going around, certainly.
I'm sick myself, so I understand.
Yeah, and I think Kirsten is present here, but is probably going to be in and out also with
Yeah.
a sick child, a sick spouse. I think.
Yeah.
But
So we are running the Zoom. Hey.
right. So does that means we're emitting? So I see Barb. Okay, so all right. So let's give that a little bit for folks to come on and thanks again, Ron, for joining us and for what will require a little bit of patience as we wait to get going here. Hi, Barb.
How you doing?
Pretty good. A little frazzled, but
Yeah.
great to see you and others here.
Have you been following this session at all?
Well, trying. There's certainly a lot going on. I think, and Devon will have, he's done some testifying, submitted some letters, so we'll probably get an update from him and hope to hear from you as well during the public comment. Oh, here's, so I was just explaining, Kirsten is may not be able to run the thing, so if we have to, Marisol, do you also have, oh, so you do, okay. Good, thank you.
Hi,
So
Terry.
you just let Terry in. Hi, Terry. It's nice to
Hi,
meet
everybody.
you. We probably will have more folks joining, so I'll give a formal introduction later. But I'm Tig Dooley, one of the co-chairs. You may know Marisol. I think you know others on the call, but great to meet you and thanks for joining us.
So glad to be here.
Hi, Gail.
Hi, Gail.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you. Faces.
I'm now putting together G. Muhammad. So yes, okay. So you're also from the New Jersey office, right? Okay, nice to meet you. I'm Tig. I need to help people pronounce my name every time I meet someone new. Tig Dooley. It's good to meet you. I'm one of the co-chairs along with Marisol. Well, I'll probably do a little introduction when we get more folks on, but Scott Semple and Andrew Gearing are other members of the committee. I think Devon Ward is the current interim ombuds. So we're still waiting for a few other members of the advisory committee to join. There's often additional members of the public joining, but we'll give it at least a few minutes to try to get some other folks. We know at least one is running late.
Heck, I had a question. So the people in the public can get in. The link is allowing them to get in.
I think so. It does. I do think either Marisol or I have to admit.
Oh, okay.
But that's so we let you in that way, Barb. I would guess I'm expecting some others as well, in addition to committee members. But I think it's all the same link, but it's normally Kirsten who does the admitting part, and
Oh, okay.
he has
I didn't know whether I could send a link out to other people.
You can send it, and I think if they click it, we'll just have to admit them when they try to join.
No, I didn't send it. I was wondering, could I? I didn't know whether I could or not, so I didn't send it out.
Oh, I think so.
You know how some links are
I guess I shouldn't speak
person.
for the,
Kirsten-
I don't know if there's any
Kirsten-
rules on that, but
Kirsten said in an email yesterday that if you are inviting other people, you would have to send the link out for yours, like from your specific or one of us, because the way they would normally have the public, if they're not here, like Barbara is here specifically, as are the other members here, it's normally during the public opinion, not public opinion,
public session, yeah.
Thank you.
But
Yes.
they can get in though when the public comment, right?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
they
okay.
can.
That's what I wanted to know, and I wasn't sure.
Is
Okay.
it only then though? It's only then?
Yes. Kirsten said that's.
Oh, I
work
didn't
they take,
appreciate
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But so folks can watch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
But,
So maybe we won't have as many other members of the public joining until later, but we still want to wait for a couple minutes to get some more of the committee members on, and so I'll mute for a minute. But if we have to get started without a quorum, we can just put off. We don't have votes to do, but we do have other things to discuss.
Do you want to just give people till 6:40 and then we get started at least with?
Yeah, no, I don't want to go any longer than that, certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say to all New Jersey members, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Greatly appreciate it. And thank you for Barbara for actually getting everybody connected, as well as Devon.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us. We are doing some amazing work here. I am proud to say for the first time, I could actually say proud with correction stuff. But
That's great. Yeah, no, we definitely want to hear about that, and I hope we'll have further opportunities to kind of dig in even more. Don't want to put you on the spot tonight, but anything you'd like to share would be great.
My co-chair shy. I am not.
I do want to tell you that's the first thing Gail said, that she's incredibly proud of the work that you guys are doing.
And just for, I like being on the spot.
I love it.
There's some people who could just get up in front of a crowd and talk, and I wish I had what you have.
Yeah, I feel like the need to script everything and revise it, and try to memorize it ahead of time.
Yeah.
Some people probably wish I would do that, but yeah. No.
All right. Well, so like I said, I don't think we have critical votes, basically the minutes, so I don't want to waste people's time. And I do think there's plenty to cover. So, to the extent we haven't already, we'll consider the meeting convened. Once again, in case others have, I guess joined on YouTube or whatever, I again didn't appreciate that. that not everybody could be in here. I'm Tig Dooley, one of the co-chairs. Marisol Garcia is the other co-chair. The other advisory committee members that I can see are Scott Semple and Andrew Gearing. We are expecting some others to join, and hopefully we're not missing them when they're coming in. And Devon Ward is the interim ombuds who has been also nominated to be the permanent ombuds. So we'll skip over the minutes. In case anyone is looking at the agenda, I am going to go also a little bit out of order because I think mostly what we want to discuss, the report from Devon. In this sense, it's the interim to discuss some funding issues, and then again to just hear from our guests, whose time we're very grateful for. So the last meeting was the January meeting when we had our public hearing. The minutes of that, frankly, are mostly executive session. So again, we'll put those off. But obviously, the committee ranked our finalists with Attorney Ward as the first choice. And on February 10th, the governor did make that nomination, so to speak. So Devon, you can jump in or tell us later. I don't know yet if there's a scheduled hearing or anything with the nominations committee. It's not the Judiciary Committee; it's the Executive Nominations Committee. But that will be forthcoming. I think everything, as far as I know, has been a little smoother this time than the last. We're grateful for that. So that's really the only update on, from me anyway, on the permanent position. The other thing on the agenda that I was going to talk about, but I think we'll get into equally, if not more, when Devon speaks, is funding for the office. So the other big development since our January meeting is the governor released his proposed budget. As Attorney Ward, I'm sure will note, he made a request for a large increase, a justifiably large increase of the appropriation for this office. And the governor's recommended budget does not accept that. It flat funds the office at $400,000, which, as we all know, is kind of unacceptably low. So this is the time now during which, that's the proposed budget, right? So we all need to get to work and do what we can to have the final budget be more appropriate. And I know Devon has already been started on that, and hopefully we can discuss here other things that the advisory committee and anyone else, members of the public, et cetera, can and should be doing to help with that process. One of which is, for our we have been pointing to New Jersey as well as other states, with comparable general populations, prison populations, and pointing out the enormous discrepancy in funding. I'm sure you guys can tell us. You may be underfunded as well, right? But it's all relative, of course. And we're starting, unfortunately, much lower, and both relative to other correction ombuds offices and other sort of independent oversight ombuds type positions within our state. So this is a significant issue, and as we discussed it at the hearing. I personally, I think. Devon, as interim, has been doing a wonderful job getting things up and running, but there's only so much, one or two people can do. So we need more money for more people, and then hopefully we can, be getting to a point where, we're also saying that we're proud of what the office is doing. So I think then that I would then turn it over, Devon, if you'd like. I know you sent us some materials, and if you could kind of maybe walk us through those, because I'm not sure everyone had a chance to review. So essentially, the update from your perspective, I'm sure funding will be a big part of that, and so we can kind of segue into that discussion.
Sure. Thank you, and want to thank the New Jersey office for being here. Great to see you all. I'm going to try to be brief in my remarks, but wanted to give a couple updates on the office. We were able to get our state website up and running. So we are, if you Google us, we are, you can find us on the ct.gov website. We do have a kind of a general inbox, correction.ombudsman@ct.gov. That's the most efficient way for me to be able to take in complaints because they're all in writing. There's a form also on the site too that asks for a lot of just crucial information that'll help me sort through the issue. which includes, the inmate number, facility, their particular housing unit, wherever they're at in the facility, and then whatever their issue is. And I actually adopted that form, modified it from New Jersey. So yeah, that's on the website and that is live and up and running. The other big update is we've been approved for an office assistant. The job posting should go public within the next week or two, I'm hearing. It's been approved by OPM. It is pending in CT Core, which is, like the internal interweb for the state of Connecticut. But I'm hearing in the next week or two, it should go public. I've requested that the posting be posted for 30 days to try to get a good amount of applicants, and then we'll go from there. Moving toward the budget, as the chair mentioned, the governor's budget proposal is flat funded at 400,000. Had an opportunity to meet with them last week. And when I say them, I mean the governor's chief of staff and his policy person for criminal justice, Patrick Cullen. We discussed the budget. They don't have any opposition to the budget being increased. Their point was that, by the time that I got here in September, and the budget submission process was already kind of a bit underway. That usually starts in October. And so, I was a little bit behind the 8 ball in that, and they kind of just put a placeholder in. And so it wasn't, their response was that it was not intentional or a reflection of the office, but kind of just because of the transitional period and the time I came in, wasn't really able to actively really work with OPM and trying to develop a budget, even though I did send them over a supplemental request. It just didn't make it in. And so they don't have any opposition to it. I've also talked to the appropriations co-chairs, Representative Walker and Senator Austin. They are both very aware of the financial needs of the office, and have both expressed commitments to me to try to get more funding for the office. And so we're very early in the process, right? In that we just had the hearings last week. The working groups will likely take place over the next 2 months or so. And they've asked me, obviously, to be a part of the working group related to the Office of Government Accountability, where the Ombudsman's office is housed, but they've also invited me to be a part of the working group for the DOC budget as well. And so moving into kind of the legislative priorities in the DOC's budget, there were a number of things in the DOC's budget that I think I took that were concerning. I think first and foremost, most folks know about the governor's proposal to eliminate free messaging for incarcerated folks. It largely seems like it's a non-starter for many lawmakers, and that I don't think it's going to gain much traction. The other couple line items. So the budget does include a $5 million increase in health services that is purported to help fill 44 positions within the health service unit. It's a positive step, but I still think there needs to be more support for the health services unit. I do think the current budget or the budget proposal really underestimates the medical demand that's likely going to happen over the next 2 years. The last fiscal 24-25 anticipated the number of sick call requests at 16,000. The actual number for that period was 25,000. So they don't really do a great job at predicting. And so we really could probably use some more money there. The other big issue in the budget is they're trying to bring in this third-party utilization review organization. It's called NAFCare. They actually have a contract right now with DOC. And for folks who are not familiar, a third-party utilization review is usually a committee of folks that decides whether or not a particular medical procedure, outpatient medical procedure, is necessary. And folks may recall, the URC process in DOC was the result of a ton of litigation in the past. And so I have some pretty strong concerns about outsourcing that function to somebody who doesn't have any interaction with patients. I've been in contact. I actually forgot to put it in my notes. I actually attended a meeting with 1199, which is the union for the healthcare workers within DOC, and they have very strong concerns around AvKare because it's already being used, and that they're reporting, and I'm seeing a lot of the reports where they're making recommendations for folks to go to outside consultations. They're being denied, and not only are they being denied, they're not being told why they're being denied in terms of the workups that they need to do in the facilities to get some of these outside consultations approved. And so that third-party utilization review service is in the governor's budget, and it's something I think we all should be watching out for. And I know some of the correctional staff are opposed to it as well. The other things, in the budget, it doesn't, I know it's in there, but there isn't a line item for food services. That's a big complaint that I get from folks who are incarcerated is the food is just horrible. And so that's not really spelled out in the budget in terms of how much they're planning on spending on food services. It's kind of included into their other expenses line, which is like a couple $100 million, and so you can't really tell. The budget does include nearly $1 million increase for commissary funding, and from what I've been told, that is going to allow for the commissary system to be brought to the tablets, so folks can start ordering commissary through the tablets as opposed to the paper system that they currently use. One of the things I'm advocating for is for healthier options in the commissary line item. One of the things I think that was shocking to me is that folks are not able to order water on commissary. And that's just shocking, right? That no one, when you talk to folks in DOC, you say, do you realize folks can't order water on commissary? And they're like, really? I never thought about that. You can order Gatorade, you can order all sorts of sugary drinks, but you can't order a bottle of water on commissary. And so, adding some healthier options, lower sodium foods, less processed foods to the commissary offerings, I think is something that folks have been asking for, and hopefully we can get accomplished in this budget. I already talked about the free messaging. I think that's a critical need for folks. We've received credible complaints through that service. I know other advocates have as well. And so, that absolutely is just a nonstop, full stop thing that just cannot be eliminated. And so, we're going to continue to monitor the budget process. It goes from now until April, or excuse me, now until June. And so, so I guess switching over to my budget, I think what I would have loved to ask for was somewhere north of $1 million. I think what was more realistic after talking to the chairs of appropriations was somewhere around the $800,000 mark.
Yeah, just sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to clarify that when you earlier said that the governor doesn't, he said, or the governor's office doesn't have opposition to it, you're not referring to your original request. I assume you're referring to, is it a specific increase that they're not opposed
so
to?
they're not opposed to 800,000,
Yeah.
800,000 request.
Yeah.
They're not opposed to that, and that number, it's a similar amount of funding as the Office of Child Advocate. Their budget is around 860,000. Even inmate legal services, which is a line item in DOC's budget, is around 800,000. It's like 760,000. And so, the way I look at it is, if we can get double, if we can get 800,000, look, this is a tough budget year. It's gonna be a tough budget year. But if we can get 800,000 at least for the biennium, show what we can do as an office with that, I think we'll be in a good position to come back and ask for increased funding in the next biennium. And so they're not opposed to the 800,000. I think with the 800,000, I should be able to hire 2 office assistants, 2 associate ombudsmen, 2 investigators, 1 staff attorney, and 1 medical consultant, and also be able to get a file management system to be able to better respond to complaints. And so that's my hope. Also on the legislative end, testimony is kind of in the thick of it. It kind of really just started maybe about a week ago, but I've testified on a couple bills. One is related to the collateral consequences of criminal records on housing opportunities. That was heard in housing, I want to say Tuesday. But the bill would require landlords to disclose potential denials due to criminal records before they collect application fees. And I know from, clients I've had in private practice, that's been a big issue where, you pay a couple $100s for an application fee for them to run your background only to get denied. And so you lose out on your $200. And if they would have told you from the beginning that, hey, your criminal conviction is going to preclude us from giving you housing, you probably wouldn't have applied. And so, I think it's a reasonable measure. Had an opportunity to talk to the housing chairs about that bill. And so it's looking like it's going to make it through. Waiting for HB 5445. That's the act concerning the use of strip searches and criminal restraints by DOC. It's a bill that was authored and sponsored by the Stop Solitary group, and I'm supporting that bill. Waiting for it to get a hearing scheduled. Another one I'm following is SB 1309, which is an act concerning fines for disciplinary actions in correctional facilities. I would be strongly opposed to that bill. Setting fines for folks because of disciplinary issues in DOC, I think is wholly inappropriate, especially knowing how broken the disciplinary process is right now, and that upwards of 90% of the disciplinary tickets that are handed out are usually they're either pled guilty to or the officer, whoever wrote them, is usually found to have won them. So it's very rare. And even in the instances where somebody does adjudicate a ticket, usually the punishment is a lot worse adjudicating the ticket than just accepting the guilty plea. And so, would hate to see a financial component added to that flawed process. So that one hasn't been scheduled for a hearing, but following that one really closely. I've drafted a bill that relates to excessive force and adds some more teeth to the Office of the Ombudsman. That bill doesn't have an LCO or bill number yet, but I'm hearing from judiciary chairs it's likely going to be included in a DOC omnibus bill. So I'm tracking that.
Sorry, would that address the subpoena issue that you?
Correct. So it does, my proposal, it does a couple things. One, it does add in the subpoena power back to the office. That was included in the draft bill that would created the Office of the Ombudsman, but it did not make it into the final bill. And so that is something that's in there. It also does refine, it relates to the claims commissioner process too. And that what I proposed is that the Ombudsman's office, because we're almost a fact-finding office, that we should be allowed to almost draft a attestation or an affidavit that says somebody has a credible claim against DOC, and they should be allowed to proceed directly to suit, as opposed to going in and waiting 2 or 3 years in the claims commission process. The Ombudsman's office has a unique ability to investigate claims and facts, and I think we're in a better position than the claims commissioner to really find out the facts of a situation and really figure out whether someone does have a credible claim. And so I actually think that piece too does add a little bit more teeth, for lack of a better word, to the office, the ability to be able to allow folks to proceed directly to suit in Superior Court.
I don't want to get too sidetracked on this. Sure. I mean, I think that's a good idea, but like what percentage do you think of prisoners are suing in state court?
Well, so I talking to the claims commissioner, Robert Shea, he says over 60% of the claims that he receives are from inmates.
Really?
Over 60, and they have about 600 to 800 claims a year.
I mean, just having done this in private practice, I'm referring to you, is it really, I mean, can't you almost always kind of bring a 1983 claim for most? I mean,
that's a federal court. So that's a federal court. So you can always
so skip the claims commissioner and sue in federal court. No,
different legal standard though, right? So when you're suing in federal court, you're suing for a deliberate indifference, way higher bar, versus suing in state court under a negligence standard, which is a way lower bar.
Yes, gotcha. So did you in representing clients?
I've been in both processes. I've done both, and where I've had, I've had cases where I've had credible claims, where the DOC has completed their security division investigation. They've implicated folks in liability, and you still have to wait 2-3 years in the claims commissioner queue to have your just to get into court. And then once you get into court, the Attorney General's office is going to file all their motions and do all their procedural things to try to defend the state.
Yeah.
And so, I think the quicker we're allowing folks to proceed directly to court.
Well, sure. I agree with the the proposal. It just
Sure.
I mean, it's just my own ignorance because I've done it plenty in federal court, but I guess they probably don't appoint lawyers as much in state courts. I just
Well, again,
represented.
it's a completely different legal standards,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And way higher burden for someone in federal court. And so,
Yeah.
so yeah,
no, it's not
so that's in
sorry.
the bill. That's in the bill. But I think one of the most important things too is the excessive force provision. What I've proposed in the bill is to mirror. So Connecticut, had the police accountability bill in 2020. It imposes on police officers when they see another police officer engaged in excessive force, it places an affirmative duty on them to report it to a supervisor. I think those same provisions should apply to correctional officers. And right now there is some language in statute, but what the language says is that it doesn't place an affirmative duty on the officer witnessing the excessive force to report it. So that's lacking. But what the language says is the person should report it to a supervisor, and that's very vague language. That could be a lieutenant, that could be a captain. So what I've done in the bill I'm proposing is that not only does the officer who witnesses the excessive force need to report it, they have to report it to the warden, who is, the chief person in charge at each facility. And then the warden has to report it to the state police because we want an independent person to come in and investigate it. And so in my very short time in this role, there's been several instances where, I've witnessed or not witnessed, but I've received claims that have been substantiated where folks have been assaulted by staff. It's been to the knowledge of the wardens and it hasn't been reported to the state police. Actually, one of the cases actually made the paper. It was a person who was incarcerated at Corrigan. He was assaulted by a CO. He required medical attention. His ribs were broken. He had to be transported out, and it was never reported to the state police. The only reason it ended up being reported to the state police is because that person was released. They reported it to their probation officer, and their probation officer reported it to the state police, and they ultimately made an arrest on the CO. But the warden was aware the entire time and never reported it. And so this language would clean that up quite a bit. So I'm hoping when the LCO comes out, I'll certainly be sharing it with advocates and trying to get that passed, because I think it's a really powerful piece to prevent some of the things that have been going on. I know lawmakers are acutely aware. Every lawmaker I talk to is very aware of what's going on in DOC related to inmate assaults, particularly because the state just approved a $3 million settlement last week related to the death of Robert Talbot. And folks are not happy about it. They're not happy at all about it. And so, I think the bill, when it comes up, I'll definitely keep you all aware. Moving on specifically to the Office of Ombuds, want to let you all know the office at this point has received almost 350 complaints. And it is very tough for me to balance visiting facilities, the legislative session, and responding to complaints. And I would really appreciate the committee's input in what they think I should do, because at this point, I am considering maybe putting a pause or suspending taking on new complaints. At this point, I have 350 complaints. I would say out of those, I've maybe gotten to 60 or 70 of them. And so would really appreciate the committee's guidance on kind of how to move forward.
So when you say get to, does that mean like resolve or even looked at, like what?
Resolve. So,
okay.
And it's, some of them are minor, some of them.
That's what I'm kind of wondering is if you of 350, if you've actually, I mean, you may not have even been able to really review all of them in detail, but if you're able to yet kind of have a sense of, how many would require significant amounts of your time. Obviously, my reaction is there needs to be more people in the office. But I'm kind of curious, just like if you have the sense yet. I know you were using like this spreadsheet to keep track.
So I'll tell you this: there are stacks of letters in my office that I have not been able to even open or get to. because every day I have at least 10 or 15 people in my inbox emailing me or calling my office, calling my cell phone, my state issued cell phone, raising issues. So that's why I strongly encourage folks to email me, because the letters are very tough for me to open up and actually read, because either, days when I'm not in the office or days when I'm at the Capitol, it's just hard to keep track of. And so to the ones that, to your question, I guess the straightforward way to answer your question, the ones I haven't answered, I am not even sure
Yeah.
what the nature of the claim is for some of them.
Yeah, so that's kind of what seems to me like most critical. I understand what you're saying, and can appreciate the kind of difference there. But it seems critical to me. It seems critical that people making complaints are like know that they've been received, and know even if it's like, hey, we have to have a system of prioritizing. We can't do all of them at once. We have other things. It might take a while. Some acknowledgement. And I think you talked about once we had the website up, it might be easier to do that. But of course, if they're sending letters or making phone calls, it's not necessarily that they're coming in the same way. I can't. Scott, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, for me, I can speak.
Yeah, you.
Hey, how are you?
Jump in. Yeah.
Hey, good morning or good afternoon.
A couple of inquiries. If I understood you correctly, you're looking to double the current budget based on need, but there's a couple things that come to mind. How did you come to that number? And then I didn't hear anything about being able to elevate analytical capacity into what's going on in these systems. So I'd be interested in your perspective on that. And the reason I say that is because at one point in time, I paid very close attention to what was going on in New Jersey, and I know what the budget is there. And I shared the annual report with the advisory committee. And your first annual report, by the way, New Jersey, you did a great job. I really think it's not even close to that 800 number. That's where I stand, and it's not commensurate populations, but the circumstances that are impacting these facilities are very similar, especially as it deals with healthcare, aging populations, and a lot of other different things. So I'm just interested in your perspective. Is this just like a shot at like just elevating, what's needed to get things going, or what's your long-term plan in terms of what that office needs?
Yeah, so really the 800,000 is really just what I thought was politically feasible, looking at what they funded Child Advocate and inmate legal services with for this biennium. I share your opinion that I don't think the 800,000 gets us necessarily to where we want to go. But I thought, at least talking to them, that I got the sense that they weren't going to give me the 1.2 or 1.4 that I thought would be, something that was commensurate with what could be done. So I think the 800 is consistent with what they funded other offices in the Office of Government Accountability at. And so that's really where that number comes from. I haven't had the opportunity to sit down with my OPM budget analyst and kind of go through, breaking that budget up. I've kind of done it a bit on my own, which is how I came up with the personnel complement. So that's answer one to one of your questions. The answer number two, in terms of having somebody look at the data, that's where the case management system comes in. Because I think when you're talking about New Jersey, you want to be able to look at aggregate data, right, at the end of this, and be able to say, hey, we got out of the 1,000 complaints we got over the year, 40% are related to medical, 20% are related to assaults, 20% came out of McDougal, 20% came out of York, something like that. I think is some of the information you're looking for in that they have broken down in New Jersey. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm most concerned about, and I think you'll appreciate me saying this, is like, I think we have a huge healthcare issue, not only in Connecticut, but it's a national issue. Sure. And it's very, very hard. And it's like you have to surround yourself with people that can give you good advice.
Yeah.
When the day's said and done, my biggest concern is this aging population that is sitting in our prisons right now, and what is our response to that?
Yeah. So I mean, the medical consultant, I guess, loosely addresses that, but it's not somebody that can look at from a like a high level healthcare outcomes. I do know DOC, I think you're probably aware too, they have an information system that can show you at any given month how many people are on the medical sick call list, how many people are scheduled for outpatient consults. They can break it down by facility, they can break it down by demographic, they can break it down by race. So I mean, that information I think DOC already has. Something I've floated with respect to the medical issue. It's something I've talked to legislative leaders, and I've also talked to the governor's offices. I think the issue regarding MA medical needs to be looked at from a comprehensive standpoint, getting some stakeholders around the table, maybe yourself, chairing it as a former commissioner, but we have some of the brightest minds in healthcare in the state between Yale and Hartford Hospital and Trinity. And to me, it baffles me that we're spending upwards of $130 million to try to provide care for 10,000 people. And we can't do it. 130 million to provide healthcare for 10,000 people, and we control every facet of their lives, and we're still getting horrible healthcare outcomes. And I don't know what the solution is because I'm not a healthcare provider, but you're well aware that from the DOC side, when UConn was providing the services, the complaint was that DOC wasn't receiving adequate services. On the UConn side, the complaint was that it wasn't enough money for the services that DOC was saying they wanted provided, right? And so I think even the notion, right, that folks are operating under thinking that UConn's no longer involved in DOC healthcare is a fallacy. The majority of the outside consultations, outside visits are still done by the University of Connecticut. So it may be under a different name, but the reality is it's still very much operating the same way, right? And so it's not an issue I think that could be solved necessarily through the Office of the Ombudsman. I think it's really a comprehensive issue where you got to get health services team from DOC, some outside medical folks, and some other stakeholders around the table to really look at it from a comprehensive standpoint. But I share a lot of the same concerns that you have, Commissioner.
Well, make sure you call me Scott from here forward. But
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And for the good of the group, that Devon has deposed me on a number of occasions, and it's hasn't been. I appreciate what you're doing, but the underlying issue for me is like we have a full-time ombudsman totally committed to the needs of this population, and I think we share that concern, and I hope that that's your vision.
Yes, sir.
Marisol,
I see your hand before I go on.
Devon, I wanted to ask you, out of the 350 complaints that you've gotten, have you looked through them or enough to find out if there are duplicates? Because I'm not saying that 350 isn't plausible. I just want to make sure that we're either cataloging and making sure that people are not continuously sending the same thing. And, and as several people have mentioned, this idea of, providing acknowledgement at least to let people know that, hey, I've received your documentation or I've received your complaint. That's, I think, even a quarter of the way will provide some, not relief per se, but at least something. But I'm just concerned about there being duplicates, people not getting acknowledgement, because this has been the historical context that we have had this problem with this office when it was within the DOC beforehand.
Yeah.
So
no, there are duplicates for sure. Not only are there duplicates, but there are, I'm sure there's duplicates in that 350, and there's also, I know, repeat flyers, right? There are certain folks that they found my office, it's worked for them, and in certain circumstances, and they're continuing to contact the office, sometimes regarding the same issue, sometimes regarding different issues. But to answer your question just straightforward, yes, I know within that 350 there are duplicates.
So can we just stay on this for a minute? There's a couple different topics, but I just want to make clear for our friends in New Jersey, for Barb, like everybody can jump in here, and I'd can I ask, like, what is the specific sort of like complaint process for you all? Like, it strikes me, ideally you would have like a kind of an online form, right, where different like information could be collected so that the ombuds or whoever's investigating would know, oh, okay, this person is this old and it's a health thing, like, and be able to prioritize and like get all these data points. I recognize, sometimes we have folks who don't have access, they have their tablets removed, I wouldn't want to necessarily say we're not responding to a handwritten letter or a phone call, you have to do it this way. But is it, do you guys have insights on how to arrange that? Because yeah, I think it's so important not only to have the acknowledgement of receipt, but also to know, like, if one of these letters sitting here is like something that really is high priority, to be able to give it that priority. I don't, again, you don't, but I just want to know what yeah, go ahead. And there's a small group on here, so it's certainly fine to raise hands, but don't be shy about just speaking up.
Yeah, do you want to start, or you want me to jump in about how we take the complaints? You're muted.
Yeah, you go ahead and start, Terry.
I just want to again salute my ombudsman, because that was really one of the first things he did was command the station to intake, and he did that excellent, because my phone stopped ringing. So Terry, I really want you to share that with them, because that was, although he did have staff, I wanted to ask the interim ombudsman here and connect. Do you have any staff? Who's
None.
Do you have any staff?
Not only do I not have staff.
Approval, yeah.
Yeah, not only do I not have staff, but when they structured my budget for this biennium, all of the money for my office is in the personnel service line. And they are not allowed to deviate any of that. They're only allowed to deviate up to $6,000 from that personnel service line into the expenses line, right? So things like getting a file management system, I'm limited in. I only can spend the money that I have on personnel services. I only can spend $6,000 on office expenses until July, until I get a new budget. So yes, it's a tough situation. But no,
Yeah.
I don't have staff. Just me.
You're in such a tough spot, Devon. And just before I jump in and sort of lay out kind of how the office in New Jersey is set up, I feel very established, having been here, 2.5 years, but I'm not as good in the legislature as you are. And I'm not as good in looking at DOC's budget as you are. There are ways in which you're bringing, I'm not a real lawyer in the way that you are, in terms of having brought litigation. And so I'm both, a little intimidated by how quickly you came in and took action on all of those fronts. And also, we've got so much to share about how we're doing things in New Jersey. So when I started, I had 10 staff members already. I now have 25 staff members. So we've grown the office quite a bit. They're not all handling individual level complaints. So we've divided the office into a few divisions. We have one division that is focused on individual level complaints, and that's our biggest division. It's maybe 16 people. And then we have another smaller division that's focused on systemic issues. And so they'll be the ones, if we got a bunch of complaints about the food, we're not going to respond as if that's an individual level complaint. We'll do an inspection of food services. And so the systemic team would do an inspection of a facility or of a service or of an operational thing. And then we have a third division, which is legislative engagement, public engagement, communications, external affairs. That's Ron's department. And that's our smallest division. It's, it's 2 people, but it's 2 full-time people who are taking that off of my plate, So we have enough people now that on any weekday, I have 4 staff members on site in a prison. I have, we've got 9 prisons. So we're, a pretty similar size. We have some bigger prisons. So our population is actually larger than Connecticut's. We've got about between 11,000 and 12,000 people incarcerated. And we've got another, I think, 10 to 12 halfway houses. And we've just started monitoring halfway houses. But for each of our prisons, I have 1 to 2 staff members who are kind of permanently assigned. Like, this is your prison. You need to go be at that prison all the time. You need to be on site 3-4 days a week. You need to have good relationships with the leadership there. You need to know every level of decision maker at that facility, so that when a complaint comes up, you know exactly who to go to like look into it further. You know what documents to pull. You know where everything is, and you're making really regular rounds.
No.
So they're picking up complaints that are dropped in mailboxes. We have staff who are answering the phones. I've got 4 people whose full-time job is answering the phones, 5 people. And we get a lot of written letters. We actually don't have a system where somebody on a tablet could send us an electronic message from prison because it's not confidential. The Department of Corrections can see it. So we have these less efficient routes to get stuff to us confidentially, and we get a lot. We get 250 complaints a week. But each of my individual staff members has a caseload of 20 to 50. Like, there's no one person with 350 cases that they have open, and they couldn't handle it. Nobody could handle it. No, our best staff couldn't handle 350. So we have some specialization. I've got 2 staff members who are nurses. One of them is the primary point of contact for health-related individual complaints, and one of them sort of works at the systemic level, looking at healthcare services and looking at continuous quality improvement and gathering data and doing large analysis. Our systemic team does facility inspections, and they do sort of a combo of monitoring the different regulations, compliance with the regulations that have to do with living conditions and fire safety and food safety. And they layer on top of that kind of gathering data and records and analyzing how much time are people getting out of their cells, what kind of activities are they engaged in, how much violence is at the facility, do people feel safe? And so it took a while to really develop that inspection tool, that inspection process. And partly you want to work with the Department of Corrections to develop it, because they have to think that the standards are fair and reasonable, and that they, like, okay, we would judge ourselves by that standard too, in order to buy into a score. When we tell them, like, hey, you got a failing score, if they're not at least somewhat bought into the process, then a failing score doesn't mean anything to them. We want them to be bought into it. So we passed, a draft instrument back and forth several times. We sort of piloted the inspection instrument at a facility, like over a slow period where we did a 4-day inspection, and then we came back a month later and 2 months later and 3 months later, and we sort of came back several times to give them opportunities to raise their score, basically to say, oh, we fixed this, we fixed this, we fixed this, show me the documentation, show me the kitchen again, show me the shower floor that you fixed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so then we can kind of give them a rescore, and then it also buys us some time to do the data analysis. So I just sent Gail a draft of our inspection report at Garden State Youth Correctional Facility, which is, we don't have a juvenile prison per se, but we have a prison for like 18 to 24-year-olds. So that's the prison where we piloted that inspection tool. So why don't I pause there?
Yeah, it's not quite apples to apples, obviously, but I mean,
yeah.
Go ahead, Gail.
I still got a bunch of questions.
Gail, can I chime in real quick? Because I have to log off, and
okay, go ahead.
I apologize, and thank you, Attorney Ward, and thank you to the chairs, but especially thank you to the folks from New Jersey for jumping on this call with us. I really, really appreciate it. And you know, when the day's said and done, we're hoping to present something in Connecticut that's really going to make a difference in having some independence and perspective. So thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott. Gail, go ahead.
So you know, I hate to say you sound like you've been set up for failure if you haven't. I see a smile.
We've all said that, yeah.
It sounds like to me, that makes no sense to me that you walked into an office with no people. Like, what was happening in Connecticut with the ombudsman's office before you?
There wasn't one.
Nothing. which is look, you know, one of the things I've told folks is one of the reasons I decided to take on this role is I recognize this process was kind of in a holding pattern for almost 2 years. And one of the things I recognize is that if someone didn't step into the role, this office might not have ever got off the ground. And so, you know, I offered myself up to try to get it going, and try to get someone here to start doing the work and start having the state kind of conceptualize what it looks like to have an ombuds here. And so, you know, this is where I'm on the ground floor, Gail. It's just, you know, but sometimes it does feel like a bit like I haven't been set up for success.
What I'd just add there, oh, sorry, but I just want to echo, I mean, I fully agree with what Devon's saying, but it's also the trouble. I mean, he's referring to the interim role, you know, fair chance he'll also be the permanent person, but it'll still just be one person. And it's understandable. And you would think like, all right, well, I've started with just one person and $400,000. It's going to take a lot of time to build up to 15, 25 and, you know, $2 million or whatever. But at the same time, the office exists. The population knows it exists. They have problems, right? So he's getting the 350 complaints, et cetera, and it'll keep going, increasing. And it's impossible to do both. And so that's what, like what I would love to help with is, you know, kind of how to, like, we have what we have.
Yeah.
Obviously it won't succeed unless and until there's more money and more people. You know, hopefully there's at least twice as much money in July, which is not really maybe enough, and we can talk about that. But you know, how do we manage these 350 while Devon's also trying to lobby, you know, and meet with legislators to get more money, you know? But go ahead, Gail. Sorry, that I just wanted to support the interim ombuds and what he's just saying. Yeah.
May I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
You asked the question about this office being set up for failure. So historically, this office was never independent oversight. So there was an ombuds that was built in directly into the Department of Corrections within corrections. So there is a historical distrust for the office because it was not created in this fashion that you guys exist in your state and what we exist today.
Well, that is because we did legislation to make sure that when we created this time that the ombudsman's office was taken out of the Department of Corrections because it doesn't function under the Department of Corrections, and that was done through legislation.
Yes.
Same here, and Barb Ferry, you see, is responsible for much of that. And I think, you know, the office in the legislation, it's great, but what our legislators voted on was just this idea of the office without the money for it. And then, you know, and it was, in fact, I think it was at least, I'm trying to remember, it was obviously well over 400 that was sort of proposed when, you know, the Office of whatever budget kind of analyzed the position, which they do have to do before the legislation is voted on. The fiscal impact and analysis was, I can't remember offhand if it was over 1 million or, you know, it was at least around that 800 that Devon's been talking about. And yet we got the 400. In terms of the 800, and you know, that is a little bit separate. We can talk about that in a second. You know, it's kind of Scott's point. Should we be asking for more? That is at least, you know, before we had an ombuds, what the committee was trying to do, you know, because I don't know if you know the whole history, but there was a very long delay in getting the person in place. And so we were trying to say, well, you've given 400, let's keep accruing that 400 for those 2 years so that when we start, there's 800, and that was not successful either. So, that's why I think 800 is not enough, but it does kind of ring a bell to me as like, hey, double is better than nothing, but that's another conversation. Sorry. Ron, I see, again, feel free to jump in, but yeah, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just have a question about you said that Marisol, you said that there was an ombudsman's office within the Department of Corrections and legislated that out. What happened to the money that was allotted for the one that was in the Department of Corrections? And why couldn't that money be reallocated back to the ombuds office so that, he could begin to get some staff?
So from my understanding, when that office was in existence, I think they ended up not underfunding it, but they said that it was no longer fundable, which is how the position ended up going away. The prior ombudsman who was in that role for 20 something years. He was career DOC himself. So, once that role was no longer funded through the DOC budget, they said they didn't need it anymore. And it was non-functioning.
So
Ron,
yeah. So there's been almost a 16-year gap between when this office existed. So this office existed within DOC back in 2009, was eliminated because of budget concerns back then, and then it's been completely non-existent, defunded up until this year. So you're talking about a 15-year gap from when it last existed.
Okay, I get that now.
So out of the 400,000 budget, you haven't been able to find anybody to work?
No, well, so it has taken the state quite some time to first authorize me to hire folks, and now I'm in the queue where I've submitted all of the paperwork that they've had in terms of describing the position, what they do, what are the qualifications, but it's the standard process. Here in Connecticut, we're notorious for taking our sweet time and hiring people to state positions. And so I got the approval to hire somebody, I would say maybe in December. And I got the paperwork in January, and now I'm hearing the position is going to be posted within the next month, or not next month, within the next week or two. And look, I think at this point, I'm hoping to hire somebody sometime in the second quarter of the year at this point. But
Devon,
yeah.
I assume you can't request that permission, start that process without showing that you have the funds to pay for the person.
Correct.
Yeah, because but we do, I think even with 400, is there anything that could sustain it? My point obviously is, given how that, timeline you just laid out, we need to be kind of getting ahead of the curve for the next positions, and even as we're trying to get the money for them,
Right.
try to do both things.
Yeah, so that's the way it works. Yeah, you can't even request the position until OPM says you have the money for the position, right? And so yeah, look, I'll say, navigating the hiring process for the state, it's something, it's tough, and any commissioner in the state of
We had a little bit of it trying to get you. That was
Yeah.
also a chore. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I mean,
Trevor.
there's a lot of expectations heaped on this office, and there's no way to meet all of them right now. That doesn't mean that you can't build the foundation, that you can't sort of say, we're going to plan for the next 5 years, and I'm going to do what I can right now. And in the meantime, I'm going to communicate what is our strategic plan moving forward. It may require having a form letter that goes out to everybody that says, thank you for writing to us. What your words, your tips, your complaints are very important for us to understand. But I can't respond to everyone individually until we have staff. We're hoping to staff up in the next year. You know, like it could be that goes out and that you still get the letters and they inform what kind of questions are you asking when you go on site at a facility, or who are you calling in for an interview when you go onto a facility.
Right.
There's no way for you to do all of the things and also be in the legislature and also be hiring and also be like setting up the like you can get there. It's going to take some time and it's fine. It's okay. I would, like, and you don't have to do any of this, but if I were in the seat, I would say this year I am on a listening tour and I'm trying to learn as much as I can about how the prison system works. I am trying to go and show my face and like see the people who are working in the prisons, the people who are living in the prisons. I am learning how, like, the stuff that we have to do to navigate, to navigate the budget process. I'm meeting with community groups, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm on a listening tour. And at the end of this year, I'm going to publish a plan for what's going to be our top priorities and why. It's going to be based on all the things that I heard. I want you all to be partners in this with me. We got to build this together. There's a lot of people who really want this office to succeed. So let's build this together. But it's not going to start right today. Like, basically, you've got all these expectations on you. And the job is, at least partly now, to manage expectations and buy yourself enough time and space to get the staff that you need, to get out to the facilities and learn everything. This year, I probably have gotten I've gotten some very, very disturbing complaints related to searches, cell searches, right? And I realize I don't know anything about searches. And so I've now set aside a couple of hours with one of the operations directors to be like, okay, I'm going to go to prison school. You teach me everything I need to know about searches. I have 100 questions. And I asked for the policies and I'm reading the policies. But I can't just know everything. Like, I have to come in, I've got to learn it. And I've spent a lot of time learning about water quality, and I've spent a lot of time learning about the sick call process, and I've spent a lot of time learning about mold and learning about how K2 impacts the HVAC system. Like, all the things that come to us are things that there's no way I would be an expert in. Even though I felt like an expert coming in, like I had such a great combo of expertise to come into the position. There's just no way that I can also be an expert in this and also in that and also in that. I've got to learn it. And, luckily I've got 25 additional people, a lot of them who have other areas of expertise, and they all can learn it too. And so it's not all on me. But if it were, it doesn't mean that it's impossible to do the job. It doesn't mean it's impossible to build the office and to come up with tactical decisions in the short term, long-term strategic plans for the long term, and to do it in a way that is bringing everybody in and communicating and listening and saying, hey, we're going to build this together. And, over the course of 10 years, 15 years, 25 years, what we're going to create is going to be a really lasting, meaningful oversight body that's going to have legs and sustainability. That you communicate that, hey, we're going to build something and we want to build it to last and we want to build it together. It doesn't mean it's going to exist tomorrow.
Yeah, I was going to say, I appreciate you and thank you for taking the job, because that $400,000 that they give you for a budget, I don't know if I'd have took it for a salary for all you got to do. But
to be clear, it's not a $400,000 job. That's not the reason. There's nobody else. Yeah.
But having said that, I think just listening to what your plans are for when you get to 800,000 for the staff that you're looking at, I think that you're going in the right direction. But you need your strategic plan needs to also have a triage system, because even with the number of people you're talking about, you're still going to be overwhelmed with complaints, because as you start hiring people and things start getting done, more people are going to trust your office, which means you're going to get more contacts. So, and then you could also show, right, that, look, this is how needed this office is, and this is why we need more money. Because I don't think 800,000 is even a starter for your office. Well, it is a starter because you don't have a choice, but I see every year Terry asking for more money because we need this and we need that and we need more of this and we need another system for this. And they've been very generous, and we got 25 staff. And honestly, when they were looking to hire somebody for the ombudsman's office, one of the guys that were being interviewed mentioned he thought that you needed at least 25 staff members to do this job. And the people in the governor's office was, when the interview was over, was like, yeah, that ain't gonna happen. So don't lose hope if they say no today, because that don't mean tomorrow's a no.
Absolutely.
But there's also offices that are doing great work with 8 staff members.
Right.
And there are offices that are doing great work with 2 staff members.
Right.
In much bigger states. I mean, in Indiana, the ombudsman office has 2 staff members. They have just told everybody there's only 2 of us. I mean, who knows how many prisons they have in Indiana, probably 30, 40. They've said there's only 2 of us. This year, we're going to focus on medical. And they just drew some boundaries around. And there's like, this is what we can handle. Medical is what we're hearing the most of. Medical is what we're the most worried about. We're going to focus on medical this year. There's an office in New York. They're not exactly an ombuds office, but they have statutory authority go into all the prisons, the Correctional Association of New York. They have a staff of, I think, 9, maybe 10. And they decided, and they've got way more prisons than both of our states together. And oh my God, what's happening in New York right now with all of the officers striking and it's a little bit out of control, but they said, we only have 10 staff members. We're not going to take individual level complaints. Like we're not going to respond to individual complaints. We're only going to do inspections. And we're going to do very thorough prison inspections, but we're only going to do inspections. That's what we can do. So they're acting more as an inspector general than as an ombuds, But essentially, what any of these organizations is doing is saying, we don't have enough staff and resources to do all of the things we really want to do, or all the things that are really necessary in order to provide big, comprehensive, really impactful and effective oversight. But we can do this, and that's good. So let's do that. But we've spent a lot of time doing strategic planning, and we're focusing on these priorities, or we're focusing on this type of oversight activity because we think we can do that well, and we think we can get a lot out of it. And that'll be a stepping stone. Basically, when New York is now going through a big crisis where the Attorney General released video of somebody being really awfully assaulted by staff in a medical room. They took advantage of the crisis and they asked for more money, and they're gonna get it, right? So basically, this 10-person office is gonna become, a 16-person office because they were ready for it in the moment where there was enough political will, and then they're gonna be able to do more. So you build it over time, and you start where you can start.
I did forget to mention that excessive force bill I talked about would give the ombudsman, the office of the ombudsman, the ability to release video when someone dies in DOC custody. Because I know that's been a big issue as well in terms of transparency here in Connecticut, where Jay Allen's murder in DOC, right, and folks getting access to that video has been a challenge, and so that's in my proposal too.
Yeah.
But just wanted to say that. But so that to Terry's point, that's why I'm really at a crossroads, and I'm asking for the committee's guidance because I am probably of the mind at this point to do a mass letter to everybody and say, hey, we appreciate your claims. We're listening to them. I'm taking them in, but can't respond to anything until I get some staff.
And that people like to hear the truth. It's the truth. They will support you. And even with Terry, like what he's saying in the community, just getting them to know who you are and you who they are, building that trust is important. And then you'll have the will of the people to get that money in July, and they'll go over that 800,000 because you'll spend this time in the community listening to their stories while they're telling you all the horrible stuff that's going on. That's how you build. This is why he's my guy in New Jersey.
I didn't get through the rest of my report,
but
I did want to share with everybody that I have visited. Tomorrow actually will be the last facility in the state that I need to visit. So I visited all 13. Not only have I visited all 13, I've been to McDougal 4 times. I've been to Cheshire twice, which is what's prevented me from going to all 13 sooner. But I've been to all the correction facilities. I've walked and toured the living conditions of all incarcerated people in the state of Connecticut, whether they were in restrictive housing or in regular housing. I've walked every single housing unit as of tomorrow. And tomorrow I'm touring Brooklyn, which is our smallest prison. It only houses 200, 300 people. And that'll be the last one I'm doing tomorrow. But I've toured the living conditions of almost over 10,000 people. And so I just wanted to share that as well with the committee, that I've been to every facility, and it takes a long time. It takes a lot out of you to tour these facilities because, some of them are big. I had to do York in 2 days. I had to do Cheshire over the course of 2 days. Those are facilities that hold upwards of 2,000 people. What I've learned too, in trying to do a lot of them, you can't even do the facilities back to back because you're processing what you saw the day before in the first facility, because it's so much to take in. And so, if I just spent all my time in facilities, it would take me 2 weeks. There's 13 prisons in Connecticut. So I just wanted to share that with the committee as well, that, I have been to, as of tomorrow, I will have been and set foot in every single facility in the state of Connecticut.
Mel, a committee member, has a question for you. Mel?
Sure. Sorry for joining late. Attorney Ward wondered and I haven't been able to look at the DOC budget and the budget and the governor's proposed budget, but is he proposing a budget increase for DOC over the next biennial budget?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. Okay, good to know. And then have you appeared before the subcommittee of appropriations on DOC stuff?
So they have invited me to the working group. They at least have told me they're going to invite me to the working group and the subcommittees, but they haven't had any meetings yet, from my understanding.
Got it. Okay. One thing worth naming, right, is just I'm speaking out loud just to work through this in my own mind, right? Like the governor has proposed a budget, which is like the opening round. At this point, it's in the legislature's hand. The appropriations committee is doing its process through various subcommittees. Obviously, leadership does its negotiation as well, separate from the appropriations process. But there is time between now and the end of session to what I read your testimony as attempting to do is to effectively double your office's current budget. I'm curious how much DOC's budget has increased in the governor's proposal. I imagine whatever the increase is, shaving 400,000 of that is not significant in the relative to the entire DOC budget.
No. I think I want to say just off the top of my head, I think the total budget increase for DOC is like 8 or 10 million.
Right.
So
right.
It's a significant increase.
Right.
But, yeah.
Because I think that the again, right, like from my own perspective, this is the point about this office, is that it must be reflective of what DOC's budget is to a degree. Otherwise, what are we actually doing here?
Right.
so offline, would love to just connect with you on thinking that through, just because I'm at the legislature too often.
Sure.
And then separately, just, also wondering, relationship with the commissioner of DOC and DOC's willingness uh, to pass on official letters from your office to the population, and whether they are a helpful partner in that way, so that you're not incurring maybe the mailing costs and all this stuff, given how small your budget is compared to TOC's budget.
Yeah. That I'll say this, that my working relationship with DOCs, it's been great so far. They have not been an impediment to anything that I've been trying to do. Whenever I ask for records or documentation, they give it to me. If I need access to a particular individual, they make sure that person's available to me. If I ever want to come to a facility, I never have any issues. And so I will say I've talked to them about just how to communicate with my office. They've told me whenever I'm ready to go, they can allow folks to call me from the blue phones directly to my office. There, in terms of getting like mass communications, that's something I'd probably have to talk to them about in terms of a letter to each individual person. That may be a little bit difficult, but I know they can easily post like notices, how they post the legal notices in each housing unit. That's something they could probably do pretty easily too. Or the other option, since this is it would be a non-confidential thing, they've told me they could put a letter if I wanted on every tablet. They could do that too. They could put a letter from my office on every single tablet. They could put a video from me on every tablet too, whenever I give them the green light. So those are all ways that we've already discussed, and they're just waiting on me to be able to do. My hesitancy in doing it is that, when we had those conversations, it was more so thinking of how can we open up more pathways for folks to contact me, and I didn't want to do that without the capacity to handle what was going to come if I started doing mass communications to the incarcerated population. And so
I do agree with the approach of expectation setting, in part because I think your nomination, right, has still not gone through the nominations committee still, right?
Next week or two, it's going to come up. So
right. So I mean, for my own thought here, just is like, I think bringing people into the process, right? A letter from you that says like, I'm acting in this role at the moment. I'm going through I'm the interim. I'm going through a nominations process. This is what the process is. And while we're doing this, here's what the organization's budget, what our office's budget is, and the next few months I will be spending to ensure that we can blah blah, all of that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And then in the coming, in terms of setting a timeline, because I think that's probably important, right? Like, I anticipate opening line of communication to receive complaints and do investigations by this date. I think that way you're like, one, you're bringing them along in what the process is. Two, clarifying that like how many people actually work in the office is literally just you, right? I think, and most people would understand the challenge of that. And then some sense of timeline of, which is gonna be after, like, in June, right? Like, is when the budget is cleared. And like, I think that knowing that July 1 is the enactment of the state's new budget is like, I think clear enough for folks to understand what the timeline is. Now, granted, that's not going to address the immediate needs of folks that are experiencing stuff right now. And perhaps you set an internal criteria of things that you identify as significant and severe cases that you do want an open line of communication on at the moment. And that may be something to like name, right? And so like, potential cases of assault or whatever it is, something that is of that significance is something that they should and can contact you in the interim or whatever it may be. That may be just a way to address it, but just so because I think it's worth naming, especially in a public meeting, right? Like, I think you're under significant pressure and expectations. You're in an interim role, and the governor's opening round on the state budget has not been advantageous to your office, despite DOC receiving an increase in its own budget line. And I imagine that between now and the end of session is some negotiation on if there is to be an increase generally in the correction system, a component of that increase should go to the part of the office that's intended to protect people. And, you know, to the extent that's not happening, well, we're already starting off on the wrong foot.
Yeah. I appreciate all that.
Go ahead, Terry.
So there, I believe there is a funding formula in, I think it's the Bureau of Prisons Ombudsman Office that was created. I'll have to look this up exactly, but I think it's like 0.1% of the Bureau of Prisons budget, like will be like the threshold for like the minimum amount that the ombudsman office would be funded at. So they actually do a formula like that for you know, in New Jersey, the DOC is funded with like about $1 billion. My office has just under $3 million. So we're like 0.3% of DOC's budget. So that, you know, I think that range of like between 0.1 and 0.3%, you know, or 0.5% is probably a nice like place to anchor asks like that.
Yeah.
I would think too about, let's say you were gonna like pick a moment where you felt like, okay, it's time to send out a video message to the incarcerated population, or time to send out a letter, a JPay blast to the incarcerated population. Everybody's going to hear your voice in some way. They want to know who you are, right? And you want them to feel hopeful about what this office is. And so you could say a bit about like, here's my background. And you could say a bit about like, what do you want for them? What do you want for the prison system? You know, I want to be able to like meaningfully assess whether you're safe, whether your healthcare needs are being met, whether you're engaged in meaningful activities, whether you have access to your loved ones. If I'm not doing that, I'm not doing the job. That's what I'm here to do, you know, or say something to the effect of like, I want you to feel hopeful about your future. I want the people who work in the facilities to feel pride in the impact they had on your life. If you're not feeling hopeful about your futures, and if the staff in the facilities aren't taking pride in their work, then something's really broken here, and we got to get it working again. All of my staff would say, if I was going to send out a message to the incarcerated population, that I need to also say, I am not the grievance system.
Right.
I was not hired to do DOC's job.
Right.
Like, DOC's job is to make sure that you have all the stuff that you need, to make sure that your appointments are kept. DOC's job is to investigate use of force. DOC's job is to make sure that you're fed and clothed and this and this, you know, this and that and that. I'm outside oversight. I'm here to like see where the system is broken and put the pressure where the pressure belongs. The Department of Corrections needs to do its job. I'm not here to now take over all of the job. And I can't, you know, they've got 9,000 employees. I have 25, you know, you have one. So like so my staff would say, communicate that too, that like, use the grievance system. Don't think of me as an alternative to the grievance system.
Right.
Reach out to internal affairs to report abuse. That's what they're for. And if internal affairs isn't working, then I need to investigate internal affairs. I don't need to investigate your case. I need to make sure internal affairs is working, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, I like the idea of sending out some kind of message, and the message could say, like Mel said, you know, thank you so much for reaching out to me. I want to learn from you. I want your tips on like how I should build this office, but it's going to take some time, you know, that you're sort of buying yourself time with that communication.
Yeah.
That was really well said. I think my ears also just like lit up. I don't know if yours can do that, but perked up, Devon, when you said that DOC was good with putting videos on the tablet. That just hadn't occurred to me. But I mean, I think if you're comfortable with it, I think Terry's idea of a video, you know,
Yeah.
and you have the perfect opportunity, assuming you pass through the nominations committee, you know, once you are actually the ombuds and not the interim ombuds, like not that unfortunately not much is going to change, but you know, at least it gives you an opportunity to introduce yourself. You know, you've done the tours, it's great, but that's like officially everybody on their tablet, you know, and it can be a little bit of your background so that they can get to know you and you know, start that to build up that trust, but also to say, you know, this is the situation right now. This is the size of our office. This is the way that we can help best right now. And, you know, I don't think we need to like put limits necessarily like on this, you know, tonight, but like you might, if you decide like, hey, I got, you know, like the Indiana or wherever, where it's like, we're going to focus on that, you know, maybe that is something to consider, you know, and say like, you know, I definitely, I think saying I'm not the grievance system, you know, which, and you know, remind yourself sometimes if you look at the legislation,
Right.
you know, it's sort of baked into there that, you know, we accept complaints, but it's not like a specific one of the ombud services, you know, like there's a specific list there and it is more systemic, right? And I think we all agree that that is where the focus should be. But we also have, you know, my concern and yours and others, I think it's like, well, the folks who have already reached out thinking they want to hear from it, like, you know, they need to know that that didn't just go in the shredder, you know, that it is meaningful, like that we're, you know, considering it in some way. So I don't have a strong view on like whether or to what extent you say, hey, I'm not taking complaints, right? You know, maybe instead it's, you know, just kind of giving the truth about how long it would take to get to them and saying, you know what, I would like to really hear about this or that. And, you know, again, we're not directing you, you know, and it doesn't have to be something like voted on or decided tonight. But I think
I appreciate
those are
your
some
advice.
really good ideas, I think.
Yeah.
And to me, the important, like, you know, if you had a choice, like I can just deal with this pile on my desk or try to get more funding for the office, try to hire staff. So like we're never going to get anywhere if it's just you, like, you know, running on that treadmill. So like it's obvious that that can't be the thing that takes precedence over these bigger, you know, issues of setting up the office and getting the money, getting the staff. Like we just won't be able to help really, if that's the order of priority. But I do think the communication, you know, making sure people understand, making sure, you know, folks know what you are doing, is really important. And it just never occurred to me that you could do that with a video. I think it's like really something you should could consider. I mean, you're well spoken and whatnot, so like I'm sure you can make a good impression. I don't. Please jump in. I also want to be respectful of everyone's time. You know, we've been going for quite some time, and just to emphasize, you know, we don't have to take votes, answer things. This isn't the last time we can talk about this. So, you know, obviously, Devon, we can follow up with some specifics about, you know, the approach on the funding. I think, you know, I think there's some like Mel. I don't know if you heard this before, but the 800. I don't want to, you know, bank on anything, but there's seems to be not opposition to to doubling the amount because you know the 400 was not like intended to be like, no, we're flat funding you despite the fact that you've requested more. It was kind of just carried over. So I do think there's some question, and in light of that, can we get a little greedier? You know, I think there is some question to that, but I defer to others and you, Devon, on you know the sort of political question there. You know, is there risk there? But I wouldn't want to put that off the table. You know, and maybe you're saying 800, but folks on the committee or folks in the public are saying no, that it's got to be 1.6 or something. You know, I don't want to. You know, end the discussion on that, but I think it's great that you've already made the progress, hopefully that you have in terms of the meetings, and I will call it a commitment just in case that's helpful. The commitment from the governor's office not to oppose that. So we had invited our friends from New Jersey to discuss. We just sort of insisted that they join the other conversation. If there's anything else that you guys wanted to say or expected to say. Again, I don't want to interfere with that, but I also don't want to keep you here much longer than you anticipated. I don't, and then I hope we can. Folks don't have to stay on, but we'll try to get some. If there's people in the public watching, I again don't fully understand how it works, but okay, so if there's not, then that's not a big problem. But mostly just want to thank everyone for the conversation. At least for me, it's very helpful to hear from you all. Unfortunately, this means we'll be coming back to you, and continuing this, and hopefully at some point being able to give be in a position where you can learn some stuff from us as well. But yeah, I think it's a different situation, but it's very helpful to kind of see how an office can develop, even if there's a lot of limitations here. We don't have to accept those limitations as kind of a permanent feature.
Yeah, Devon, one last thing I'd like to just say.
Yeah.
People on the inside, they know when somebody's being real with them and being truthful with them. So always be real and truthful. Don't overpromise. Don't but tell them something to the way Terry was talking about. Your voice is important to me, and even though right now we're at a starting point, right? What you relate to me, it helps me inform the structure of my strategic plan. So I really do need to hear from you. And I mean, I don't want to be putting those words in your mouth, because they have to be real from you, how you would address them. But understand that they get BS'd a lot. They know what BS is. Believe me. I was there, so I know. They know when people are being real with them. And I would just suggest, just be real, and you'll get a lot further, and a lot more people respecting the office and wanting to buy into what the office is doing that way.
And I'm going to chime in so I could go to bed. This here lady here in the corner is your, to me, your secret sauce. It is the prisoners' families, and we have been on the ground for 25 years. I know I've been working with Barbara. And so she has the trust of the people. And if you get out in the community with her, they will, it's like, guilty by association, literally. It is the people, is the prisoners' families. It is going to be your best sort of shield and moving forward, because when you get out in the community, it's a whole different, it's different than being in a prison with those who are impacted. Families are impacted almost just as much, and nobody really understands that. So as an ombudsman to come out and do listening sessions, as Terry has done throughout our state, it gave him, oh my God, my phone just won't stop ringing. It made the people trust him. I don't know if y'all can still hear me. It created the trust. And then he also put staff in that are impacted like Ron. And so when people can see themselves in this work, that is where you will get your trust. And then the governor will submit and get the budget that you need, because this is a joke to me. And I just am appalled that they even thought about that money. In Connecticut, I've been following, like I said, Barbara, we've been doing this 24 years. You guys are doing really good in decarcerating your state too. But if they don't care about the people, that to me was a slap in the face and a failure for you, to me, as a man of color. And I'm gonna take it there. It's Black History Month. So I want to see you win. I want to see Connecticut win. And I think you picked a great model, because our ombudsman and our office is functioning well, that I have been able to go on and do other great work besides chasing around the DOC and make them do right. So this is a great model that we have built in New Jersey. I have personally worked 30 years in my state as a prisoner's family advocate. And I think you guys are gonna do well as long as you follow this guy right here, because we worked hard to get him here as the advisor, as the advisory board, right, Ron? We met almost a good year before we got Terry. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll be down in New Jersey later, early next month to
Oh, well, I'll be
check it out.
really glad to meet you in person. I do believe my ombudsman is gonna let me help host you here. So
Great.
hopefully I'll get to see you soon.
Likewise.
Thank you
Thank
all
you all.
again.
Have
And thanks frankly for, not just your time, but for saying these things in what is a public meeting. I think it's important not for folks to hear both the great success you've had and the great model, but also, candidly, the setup, as you said, Gail, here, and how we can't really tolerate that. It's was great to hear, and we'll continue to discuss, Devon, kind of the specifics of like how the step-by-step how we can get through this. But the big picture stuff, I think it was really helpful to hear. So thank you, Barb, as well, for organizing. I think it won't be our last meeting where we're all able to get together. I apologize, for the length of the meeting, but it was really helpful for us. So thank you again for your time. Marisol, anything you want to?
What I really would like to say is not only thank you to Ron, Gail for coming, but thank you, Terry, for actually putting voice to the necessity of building this office from the ground up the way it needs to be. And the real world, real time difficulty it is step by step. Because as you said, you walked into an office with 25 people. It's a little different when you walk into an office, as Gail said, it's not set up for success in the first place. So thank you at least for giving us real world, real conversation there. Greatly appreciate that.
So go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
We're so excited for you. I mean, it's such an exciting moment to create it from scratch and to build it and to have, the legislation passed, right? Like that's awesome. It's a really big deal. I wouldn't I don't want anybody to feel stuck or to feel crushed by the weight of it. It's such an opportunity. Like it's such a cool job, and it's gonna be so hard and interesting every day. And so we want you and the office to feel sustainable and long term, so that you can get up every day and be like, oh, isn't that interesting? Let me learn about it. Isn't that interesting? Let me learn about it. And become so expert in all of the things that you can, given the access that you have, that you can't be denied. You know what I mean? Where like the biggest problem all of us have in oversight is we go out publicly saying something and the Department of Corrections goes, that's not true. And just like undercuts our credibility. I was like, oh, Terry doesn't know what he's talking about. And sometimes that's true. I don't always know what I'm talking about, but like the goal, and when we're at our best, we've like done the homework and we've shown up with enough like real proof that I know what I'm talking about and this is real, that they have to grapple with it, they have to deal with it. And even if I'm not proposing like a clear solution, they have to propose a solution because I've done such a good job of presenting the problem. And that it's their job to solve the problem. So it's sort of, again, putting the pressure where the pressure belongs and saying, I've seen it with my own eyes and I have photos and I have data. And isn't that great? I mean, it's such a cool, great thing. The office in Canada, the Ombudsman office in Canada, has been around for decades and does fantastic work. The Ombudsman office in the UK has been around for hundreds of years and every year gets better and is doing more and more sophisticated work. We'll get there too. But, first let's do year one.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Terry.
Good to be joining the club, right?
Yeah. Thanks
right.
so much for having us.
Thank you guys, all of you. Thanks for anyone who's watching.
Before
Yeah, go
Before,
ahead.
Barbara, did you have anything to add?
Oh, I thought it was going to be a public comment. Only thing I want to say is thank you very much for showing up, New Jersey. And I'll be talking again to you soon.
There's no one in the waiting room, Barbara.
Oh.
There's been no button. That's what I've been monitoring to see. Nobody's in the waiting room.
Oh, because a couple of people asked for the link and they said they got it.
Okay. Yeah, nobody's. Yeah, there's nobody there.
No? Oh, okay. Nope. Okay. I just want to say, because I have to be honest too, and I always have to try to be creative about it. But I think the pushback I get is because when I hear people say, "Oh, well, you can't," people have all these expectations and, you can't do everything today. I don't think anybody expects this to all happen in one day, but I think we should have some expectations after 5 months, going into 6 months, something. I look at things and a lot of the things you were talking about, like meeting in the community, meeting with people, stuff like that. These are things that I have said. We send out newsletters to make sure to incarcerated people each month to let them know we have an ombudsman. The latest one I put out, I said he's established in the office. So, still to go through the grievance process, even though they say grievance process sometimes targets them. But I do all these things and I still feel like I can't say anything. I'm going to say it because he's right here and I don't like talking behind his back, but I feel like I can't say anything to Devon. He feels like, he makes me feel like I'm pushing him too hard or something. And so to the point that we really don't talk anymore. And I don't know if he's let you know, but we don't even talk anymore like we used to. Because when I say, well, I can't understand why, you haven't hired anybody in all these months. You've had the money and, how can I push for more money when I don't see anything happening with the money we have? When I say things like that, I guess, I don't know what it does to him, but he actually made a comment to me one day, "This is not about you." So that was very disturbing because it's not about me. It's about all those thousands of people behind bars who expect something when we got this Ombuds office open and they're not getting there. They're still coming to me. And so for someone to say to me, this ain't about you, it's just very upsetting to me. So you don't know the relationship. So when I hear people saying, "Oh, what a great job," and you've done all these things, and I'm thinking like, look at all the stuff that's being done that he could have been doing. He could have been sending out the newsletters, letting people know I'm up. We have the office, but we can't do much now because we don't have any hires. So we're working on the office, but something to acknowledge to the people that I'm here for you. I mean, they see him going into the facilities. They tell me, well, he doesn't even look at us. He's walking around with the staff. And so when I say that to him, then it's almost like, I don't know what it's like. Like I said, we got to the point we don't even talk anymore. And so I just feel I can't say anything. I have to just sit back and just let all this stuff happen. And I don't know. So that's it. So when you talk about Gail, you talk about, I can be a great resource. I definitely can. Because I got the trust of the people. I've been doing this work. I'm doing everything he's doing except going in facilities, the legislative work, all that. So, but we can't do it if I can't say anything that I feel I have expectations of you without you getting all worked up, that you can't even talk to me now. So that's my big problem. Listening tours, I have meetings every single month, community meetings for people to come in, have speakers come in and talk about different things that's going on in the prison system. This is every single month. I invited Devon in the beginning. He came to the first two. One of them, he practically just ran in and out, but he came to him and I've been inviting him since then. He says, that's work to me. So I don't invite him anymore. But that, for me, that's the opportunity to get to know the people and they get to know you so that they can build a trust relationship with you. But like now, legislation. There's a legislation going forth right now where they're trying to take back the 4 hours out of cell. We got legislation passed, mandate 5 hours. There's a legislation right now, I don't know if Devon's even knows about it, that's saying we want to take that out of the, we don't want to mandate that people get these hours out of cell anymore. That's crazy. Now that's not part of my job, but you bet I'm going to be there, and I'm going to bring people there to fight back on this. So I'm not doing any, it's not about me. And I don't know why he can't get that in his head. It's not about me. But I've been doing this too long, and I know what people need, and I want to provide that for them. This is a big job, like you said, but it's a big job that people need to benefit from it, and not just the buzz person. So I'm gonna let it go because it's just, I get so discouraged because we fought so hard for this position, so hard. And it wasn't about getting along with staff. Yes, you work with DOC. I've done that. That's not a problem. They've never given me a problem either. But the people inside knew, even though I work with DOC, I'm about y'all. I'm about you guys. Because DOC got all the support they need. You need support. But I'm gonna let it go. I'm gonna find a way to get the work done, even if I don't work with Devon. I'm not gonna let this fail. I'm not. We worked too hard to get here. And that's it for me.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
anything.
yeah.
Obviously. Go ahead.
What do you say?
You know.
You really don't even have to respond. I just have to get it out. I want people to know why they're,
I think I do.
You're doing, come on.
Respond. You gotta let him respond.
I think I do.
No, I don't want them to feel that they have to respond. That's what I'm saying.
I'd like to respond.
Gonna go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to respond. You know, I think, you know, I've come into this role and I'm trying to do my best. And, you know, trying to balance a lot of stuff. You know, I've tried to make it a point to I came to 2 of your meetings, one of them before I even started the role, right? Before I was even hired, I came to one of your meetings and sat there, and then I went to another one after that. But I've also tried to balance going to your meetings, which are very New Haven focused, right? With meeting with other folks around the state. And so, you know, the prison facilities in Connecticut go from as far north as Somers to as far south as Bridgeport. You know, I've tried to balance being in the facilities as well. When I'm going to these facilities, a lot of times, you know, so far it's been my first time there. So, you know, to the extent that folks who are incarcerated see me walking around the facilities, I am going to be with staff because I'm trying to learn the building. I'm trying to learn the building. I'm trying to meet the people. To Terry's point, Terry mentioned, you know, the folks that are in these facilities from his office, they kind of know the chain of command and who to follow up on. And so those are the things that I'm trying to learn this first go round when I'm visiting facilities. But that's not to say, you know, anybody who has interacted with me when I've been doing these tours, I regularly talk to folks who are incarcerated while I'm there. And so, you know, it's trying to balance that while I'm in facilities for the first time. You know, the other just the other tough part is, you know, I don't control my money. I don't control my budget. I don't control when I get to hire people. And so I share your frustration. I hear your frustration, but I don't control those things. And so, you know, and I know that it's a tremendous weight on you because a lot of folks are contacting you and, you know, folks thought that as soon as I got here, things were going to be drastically different. And I know folks are disappointed that they're not. And I share their frustration, you know, but I don't think that it's productive for not just for me, but for the goal of the office, right? Is if the goal of the office and the goal is helping incarcerated people, I don't think it's productive to attack me personally, because it doesn't serve any purpose. It doesn't serve a purpose in furthering the mission of the office. It actually hurts me because I'm actually going through a nomination process right now where lawmakers are looking at me. And so to attack me personally in the press, that's tough. And I'm human, right? So, to the extent that, I've limited my conversation with you, if you have stuff to tell me about particular individual concerns, as I respond to it. But, I didn't appreciate being attacked in the press for things that I didn't have any control over. And I'm trying to just do my best, Ms. Barbara. I really am. And in terms of my commitment, to this population, I've been working with incarcerated people as an attorney for 6, 7 years now. Before I got this role, I've been working with incarcerated folks. The first time I went into a prison, I was a kid because my brother was incarcerated in the state of Connecticut for 18 years. So I care deeply about this population just like you do. I'm not some shell for the governor. I didn't take this role because I needed the salary. I didn't even apply for it the first time because I thought you and the other folks that applied would have been great advocates. But it didn't work out. And so here we find ourselves. And so, my commitment to working with you, as I told you when we started out, it still stands. I don't think I could do this work without advocates like yourself. And I'm committed to working with you, but I am human. So, I needed a couple weeks where I wasn't gonna talk to you because I was pretty upset about the stuff you said about me and Yale Press because I felt like that stuff wasn't fair. And so, that's my response is look, I'm interested in working with you, and I want to try to continue to work with you.
Yeah, I think if I may, I think it's pretty critical that the ombuds and the leader of Stop Solitary have a good relationship and can communicate. I tend to agree though that it is a little harmful to the broader project, for there to be the kind of public suggestions of distrust. If there's a long-term trend of this, that it's like, geez, we got to get this guy out of here. I understand it. I don't think that is anything close to what the situation is. And so I hope that we can, like I said earlier, if Devon is confirmed, it's an opportunity. It's kind of like a new start in terms of, reaching out to inmates. I hope that can be a restart opportunity for others as well. But I think nobody, I think Gail said and Marisol said, nobody's done more for this population in this state than Barbara Fair. There's no question about that. And it is critical, like Gail was also saying, to have that to have the family members, the folks who have been in the trenches for so long on board. So there's no doubt that it's critical to Devon's success, to the advisory committee success, to the whole operation, to have a good relationship with Stop Solitary and with Ms. Fair, who is so critical to this. But I think, as Devon just said, he totally appreciates that as well. And I think there's going to have to be opportunities for you both to get together and talk, in the near future. But it doesn't necessarily have to happen, on YouTube. So I'm glad you both got a chance to speak, and I can see the kind of where you're both coming from. So I hope we can continue to work on that. It's now 8:30, so I really apologize for everyone. Again, thank you to our friends from New Jersey. Thank you, Barbara. Thanks to the remaining members of the committee, and to Devon. Thanks all of you. We will we don't have to adjourn because we didn't really commence to begin with, but we can, folks. Sorry, Barbie, go ahead.
Can I just simply say something?
Yeah.
I am so sorry. Until you just said YouTube, I was thinking this was just Among Us.
Well, I don't know that I don't think it is in fact like being watched by many people, but yeah. Nevertheless,
I'm sorry about that.
All right. Thanks. I always forget myself, and then I'm like, geez, I look like a fool, on TV. And
see, some people might think I did that purposely. Until you said we don't need to do it on YouTube, I said, oh my God, we're on YouTube. but I'm sorry.
Appreciate it, but yeah, that's okay. And you know, I think Devon had an opportunity to, you know, kind of explain as well. Anyway, so thanks for both of your efforts. Again, thank you to folks who have joined us. And we do need to, you know, Devon, continue just the basics discussions on budgeting, on staffing and stuff, but we'll let everybody go for now, and with much appreciation, and good night.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.